Good morning, everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about Big Brother 23 and, in particular, the Alliance, the Cookout. um, it is not my job and it is not any other black person or person of color's job to educate people about representation, but I'm deciding to try to do that. The reason that I decided to make this video is because being within the Big Brother family and the Big Brother community, I've seen a lot of comments and discussions that are very, very much so against the cookout, that are claiming that the cookout is racist, that is saying that the cookout and Big Brother 23 is ruining Big Brother because of how they're going about playing the game and because of what they're doing in terms of aligning and getting out the other people. All of these things that I've seen about the cookout that is negative. And I feel like it's something that someone should try to explain it, I guess, to the people who don't necessarily understand. A lot of people don't want to do that. I don't even want to do that. It took a lot out of me to even get in front of the screen and decide to try to do it, because to me and to a lot of other black people or people of color, it's something that doesn't need to be explained. It should be obvious. However, apparently it's not. So I'm going to try to do my best to, I guess, explain or defend the cookout, just because I want to. I want to just go ahead and say that for the people who are looking at the cookout in a distasteful manner, to the people who see the cookout as a racist alliance or an alliance that is not doing something that's good morally, I want you to first understand that what the cookout is doing is not about race, right? So when you're looking at the show and when you're watching the show, you could easily assume this is about race. The cookout is simply getting out everyone who isn't black. The cookout is only wanting to get black people to the end, and that's what they're doing. It's just they just hate white people. They're just only pro black. They hate anyone not black. And that is how someone who doesn't understand could see it, and that's how some people in the fandom do see it. But the issue is that it's not about race. The cookout is about representation, right? The cookout is not about the fact that they're black and no one else is. The cookout is about the fact that there's never been a black winner, and every other race has had a representation. Or at least every other race inside of that house has had a representation with a winner, right? They are aiming for representation. Their goal is for their race to be represented. It just so happened that their race is black. It's just so happened that the people who haven't been represented in Big Brother as a Big Brother winner are black people. It's just so happened that it has nothing to do. They didn't go in there and think, well, just because we're black, everyone else can go. That's not how they're thinking. What they're thinking is that just because black people have never won this game, we want to optimize that in order to create representation for black people who watch the show. A lot of the people in the cookout are fans of the show, which means a lot of the people in the cookout have watched this show and have seen no black person be represented in a winner in a normal season. So when they're playing this game and they decide that they want to band together for representation's sake, that has nothing to do with the race that they're representing. It's just the well, it does. It has nothing to do with the fact that these people are not black, so we want them out. Because they're not black, we want them out. It's not because they're not black, it's because they're already represented. Does that make sense? And it's not even that we want them out because they're represented. It's more, we want us to succeed because we're not represented. It's about the fact of it's about the lack of representation. It's about the fact that we lack that empowerment. We lack that representation. There's not another word for it. We lack that representation in a winner. So Black people going into the game want to give other Black people who watch the show and who watch reality TV and who like the game, they want to give them that representation. This is really the simplest way I can explain this. I can't even believe I'm on here trying to explain this, because to me it makes so much sense. To me it's easy to understand. But a lot of people just see it in such a racial light that I feel like it'll be easier for them to see it if they think of it in a representation light. It's just the fact that they're not represented. Had there already been a Black winner, the cookout would not exist. I feel like some people don't believe that, because some people do think it's just simply racially motivated. But the reason the cookout exists, and the reason that even though Kyland would rather work with other people, even though Tiffany would rather work with Claire and Derek X, even though Hannah would rather work with Derek X and Claire, even though they want to, since there has never been a Black winner, they feel obligated to work with the cookout. And the reason I'm saying this is because had there been a Black winner, had that representation already been made, they would not feel the incentive to work together. In the future, when Black people play, if this season brings a Black winner, the Black people in the future will not feel the weight that the cookout feels in order to get this representation across. When the cookout is talking, when Derek F and Azah are talking to each other and they're like, I hate Kyland, I hate Tiffany, they genuinely don't like these people. They don't want to work with these people. So when people are saying that it's because of the race in it all, I don't see how you don't understand that it's simply the representation, because we know Derek F and Azah don't necessarily like Kyland and Tiffany. We know Tiffany doesn't necessarily like Derek F and Azah. We know that these people don't want to work with each other necessarily. They say it over and over again in the house. So you have to understand that it must be some other reason other than just the fact that these other people are white. Clearly, Tiffany would prefer to work with Claire. Derek F and Azah would prefer to work with Brittany. They're going out of their way to decide not to work with these people because they want to optimize the possibility for representation in their community. It's really that simple. So if you watch this video and you still don't really understand, I advise you to try to take a step back from yourself, or just to simply rewatch it without any preordained ideals. Like when you rewatch this video, or when you start watching this video, think of it as if you're a child and you don't know anything. Or think of it as, I don't know anything, I don't think anything prior to watching this, I'm just gonna watch it, just to watch it. And listen, because it doesn't come down to Black and white. It doesn't come down to that. It comes down to the lack of representation. We don't have a winner. I tried to give the evidence. Hannah doesn't want to work with them. Azah doesn't want to work. They don't want to work with each other. They feel forced because they know they have a lack of representation. And this is why representation matters. This is why CBS put out the statement that they're going to get at least 50% Black, Indigenous people of color, because of the fact that there's a lack of representation in these shows. Like I said, if a Black person had already won, the cookout wouldn't exist, and then all of this discourse would not be happening in the first place. No one would even be talking about the cookout, because the cookout wouldn't be a thing. Even if it was an alliance that formed originally, it would have broken up, because they wouldn't feel the need to force this representation, because they would already have it. This is exactly why we need to make sure that we're getting this inclusion in these shows, behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, etc., because then stuff like this wouldn't happen. The cookout would not be a thing for people to be angry about, or upset about, or confused about, had there already been representation in Big Brother in the first place. Had there already been enough Black people to have won already in the first place, this wouldn't have happened. So at the end of the day, I try my best to explain. I only came on here because I just have been seeing so many comments about people thinking it's one thing, when in reality it has nothing to do with the fact that they're necessarily black. It only matters that they're black because a black person hasn't won. If an Asian person hasn't won, and then a group of Asian people wanted to do this to encourage representation, that would be perfectly fine. That would be a way to show inclusion and show representation, because it's important, because there hasn't been that person to win. And just to elaborate a little bit more, because some people may be like, well, why does this representation thing matter so much? Like, why do they do that? Because for me, it's simple. I understand. But for some people, they don't understand why representation is so important. So, for example, before this, there's been, a few black people on every season, 1 or 2 black people on every season. I can see a lot of people being like, why isn't that enough? Why aren't people just okay with that? And the reason that isn't enough is because of exactly what's been happening with the black people in these seasons, is that no black person has won. And for a while, no black person had even made it to the final 3 since Kevin, which was Big Brother 11, which was over 10 years ago. Before him, it was like Danielle Reyes. Like, making it far in the game was rare for a black person, and when it did happen, they still didn't win the game. You could be like, okay, I mean, and the reason that's important is because black people who watch the show feel underrepresented. They feel unimportant to the show. It makes them feel like there's not a chance for them in this game. You know what I'm saying? When Devon plays and she always loses, even though Devon isn't the best player. When Bailey plays, even though she's not the best player and she loses, it makes black people feel like we don't have a chance. And the truth is, it's not that we don't have a chance. It's just that since there's not enough representation, it seems as if we don't. So the lack of representation causes these minority groups to feel worthless a little bit. It makes them feel like they don't have a chance. It makes them feel like things aren't fair in this society. And even if that's something that may not concern some minorities, or it may not concern some white people, it's still something that does concern, and it does hurt other people in those minority groups. And we don't want people to feel excluded. We don't want people to feel, as a society, we don't want these people to feel excluded, even if it's just a group of them. We don't want anyone to feel excluded. So we should do our best in order to make people feel included. If that means getting more diversity, I don't see a problem with that. Another reason diversity is important is because white people, or people who are not a part of these certain groups, may feel uneducated about those groups. For example, when I went to college for the first time, I went to a predominantly white institution. So when I went there, a lot of the people that I met were white. And when I started making friends with these white people, I had over 20 different people tell me that, oh, Philip, you're the first black person I've interacted with. It didn't make me feel insulted or anything, but the fact that I was the first black person they interacted with was important, because in their minds, they've never had an experience with someone of that race. So their whole experience of black people is what they've seen on TV and what they've seen on the news and media. So if we're not in the media, or if Davon's on Big Brother 17, but she goes home second place, and you're a white person and you watch Big Brother, and that's how you see your black people, you've never seen a black person until you've watched Big Brother, then it's important for you to be more exposed to that culture. Because if you just see Davon, you may think, oh, well, is that how black people are? It's not ignorant. It's not ignorant if people are only exposed to that one thing. If the only person who's black that someone's seen is Davon, or someone on reality TV, and it's only a few of them, it's just Davon, it's just Kimmy, it's just Dominique, and it's like, oh, once per season, then they're going to try to find a way to push that into real life. So when they see me and all they know is Davon, Kimmy, and Libra for some reason, they might think, oh, is he going to argue with me? All 3 of those people got in an argument. Is he going to be kind of erratic. They're kind of all erratic. You naturally, as humans, we tend to use our prior knowledge in order to judge someone when we see them. It's not something that's unnatural. It's natural. Every human does it. So when those people who had just met me, and I was the first Black person they met in person, when they saw me, they were surprised by the way I talked. They were surprised by the way I acted. They were surprised by the way I dressed. This is how I know personally that representation is important, because the reason they were surprised is because they'd never seen someone who was Black, who didn't act like what they seen on the media or in TV or in on Big Brother, on anything. So they were surprised that I didn't act like Davon or something like that, for example. Not saying Davon acts a certain way. It's an example. Since this season, we have 6 Black people. Now, it's going to be very hard for people who don't know how Black people act to group us together. Since we have 6 different personalities, Xavier is nothing like Derek F. Tiffany is nothing like Azza. Since there's so many of them in this season, it's going to be very hard for the person I meet when I go to college to be surprised by the way I act. It won't surprise them anymore, because since they watch Big Brother 23, now they know that, oh, every Black person doesn't act like Derek F. Some of them could act like Xavier. Some of them could act like Hannah. It's just a way in order to educate people who may not be educated. A lot of people say, well, there's only 13% Black people in the United States, so there only needs to be 13% of Black people in the show. But I say, since there's only 13% of Black people in the United States, then there's a big percentage of white people who've never interacted with a Black person. So it's important for them to be shown on our TV screens so that white people don't judge Black people, or that white people don't judge other minorities, or other minorities don't judge other minorities the same way. The same way I shouldn't be judging an Asian person. And it's important that we get more Asian people on Big Brother. It's important that we get more South Asian people on Big Brother. It's important that we get more Latinx people on Big Brother, because I need to know, you need to know, white people need to know, other races need to know the extent of that race. We need to be educated more about that race so that we're not opted to criticize or marginalize or stereotype these races. Same thing with sexuality, same things with gender identity. All of these things needs to be exposed to us in order for us to be more educated. When we're children and we're growing up, if we've never experienced something, we're going to judge it based off of something we've already established in our mind, you know? Like, it's just the way the brain works. And I feel like, since I know there's white people who've never met a Black person up until college, these people are 18 years old, 19 years old, 20 years old, some of them in the grade above me, who have never had a Black friend or who've never had a conversation with a Black person. It happened to me. I know this happens. So it's important that we're in the media. It's important that we're on TV, and it's important that we are represented so that people can be more educated and people won't be fearful or scared. Not only did they tell me, oh, I'm surprised you act like this, they told me, oh, I thought I would be scared of you. I didn't think we would get along. I thought you'd be more argumentative. I thought you'd be more loud. Stuff like that. These are stereotypes that are put onto Black people that some people aren't aware are just stereotypes. I know some of you may think in your head, that's clearly a stereotype, or duh, Black people aren't this, and this. But just because you think it, and just because everyone you know thinks it, there's millions and millions, billions and billions of people on this earth. A billion is a lot, let alone billions, who don't know that it might just be a stereotype. Or even if in the back of their mind they know it's not a stereotype, they've never experienced anything else but that stereotype. So they're inclined to believe it, or they're inclined to just naturally divert their mind towards that stereotype, even though it may not be true. I try my best. That's all I wanted to say. I just don't like seeing on Twitter, on Instagram, under the Big Brother comments, oh, this season's racist. You're going to ruin the show. Speaking of that, time out. Speaking of it's going to ruin the show for the future and et cetera, et cetera. Like I said, if there's a black winner after this, there's no real reason. There's no representation reason for something like this to ever happen again, because now we are represented, right? Two, big alliances happen every season. Big majority alliances happen every season. Big alliances with only one race, composed of only one race, happen almost every season. So it's not something that's new. The only difference is that this alliance is doing it because of their race, because their race is underrepresented, and the other alliances didn't need to do that because their race was already represented, right? This is the only time where the people were underrepresented, and they felt they needed to do it because they're underrepresented. There's never been a chance for that. This has been the only chance for that, and in the future, it shouldn't be needed anymore because there should be a black winner by the end of this season. I don't know what else to say. I try my best to explain it. If you don't understand, you just don't understand, cutie. Well, you're not cute if you don't understand, because it's not that hard. Listen, we're here to learn on this earth. We're here to educate ourselves on this earth. I tried my best to help. That's all I can say. Toodles.